So we're diving into some pretty intense stuff today.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of you guys have been asking about covert contracts in marriage and how to kind of see them and maybe even rework them a little
Yeah,
bit. Exactly.
especially from like a red pill perspective.
Right, exactly. So we found this book that's been making the rounds, and it really digs into all of that. It gets pretty deep into how marriage,
Yeah.
you know, as we know it today, might not be what we've always thought it was.
Yeah, it's like he straight up calls it a trap in the first chapter, a marriage trap. I mean, he doesn't pull any punches.
No, he doesn't. And you know what? I think that's why it's resonating with so many guys. He's not sugarcoating anything. He's laying it all out there.
Yeah, for sure. And he starts with this story about Sarah, this like high-powered marketing executive who ends up divorcing her husband at 30. He was a school teacher.
Yeah, and he uses that story to introduce this whole concept of hypergamy.
Which, you know, we've talked about before on the show.
Yeah.
But he goes into it in a lot more detail.
Yeah, and he connects it directly back to this idea of the marriage trap. Like, if women are naturally drawn to partners who can elevate their status, what happens when a guy hits his peak? Or maybe things aren't going so well.
Right. He's basically saying that men are walking into the system where they could end up financially devastated, and there's not much protection for them if things go south.
It's not just about finances either.
Yeah.
He gets into the emotional side of things too, what he called emotional terrorism.
Oh, yeah. That was a heavy chapter. He talks about how some women use tactics like guilt tripping, the silent treatment, all that stuff
Right.
to manipulate and control their partner.
And he has this crazy story about a guy named Mark who was constantly being hit with these guilt trips from his girlfriend.
Yeah.
It was like nonstop.
Yeah. And he uses that story to illustrate how damaging that kind of behavior can be.
And the thing is, he argues that men are way less likely to report this kind of abuse because of, you know, societal pressure.
The whole man up thing.
But yeah, like men are supposed to just suck it up and deal with it.
Yeah.
Which honestly is pretty messed up.
Totally. And he actually cites some research that shows that like 1 in 7 men experience severe emotional abuse from a partner.
Which is, wow, that's a lot higher than I think most people would guess.
It's a serious problem. And I think he does a good job of bringing it to light.
So where does all of this leave us? I mean, he's painting a pretty bleak picture of marriage,
Yeah.
at least from a man's perspective.
Yeah, he definitely thinks a lot of men are living in this blue pill state of ignorance about what's really going on.
The blue pill.
Right.
So what's the alternative? The red pill.
Exactly. He's
Yeah.
basically saying it's time to wake up, face the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be.
And he has this great line. He says, the red pill is bitter, but it wakes you up.
That's perfect.
Yeah. And he backs it up with all these stories about guys who've taken the red pill and totally turned their lives around.
Yeah, like John. Remember John? The guy who lost everything in his divorce,
Yeah.
wife house saving, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, John. He was pretty devastated.
But he picked himself up, dusted himself off, and used that red pill perspective to rebuild his life.
Yeah. He got in shape, started a new business,
Yeah.
and eventually found a partner who actually respected him.
It's a classic comeback story.
It really is. And I think it gives guys hope that even if things are tough right now, it's not the end of the story.
Exactly. It's just the beginning of a new chapter. And that's where I think this whole idea of becoming alpha comes in,
Yeah.
you know? It's like, once you take that red pill, what do you do next?
Yeah, because that term gets thrown around a lot, alpha.
Mhm.
And it doesn't always have the best connotation.
Right, exactly. But the author is careful to distinguish between, like, the caricature of an alpha, you know,
Yeah.
the arrogant jerk, versus what he sees as the true alpha male.
So what's his definition?
For him, it's about embodying confidence, leadership, having a strong sense of purpose. He even talks about this phoenix
The
effect.
Phoenix effect.
Yeah, like rising from the ashes of hardship stronger and wiser. It's a pretty powerful image.
It is. And he actually gives a lot of practical advice on how to cultivate these alpha traits,
Right.
Like, he's a big advocate for physical fitness.
Oh, yeah, huge. But it's not just about looking good.
No, I get that. It's about the discipline, the
Yeah.
mental toughness.
Exactly. It's about building resilience, pushing your limits, proving to yourself that you can overcome challenges.
And he doesn't stop there. He also talks about male solidarity, finding your tribe.
Big time. He says it's crucial to surround yourself with men who are on the same path, who understand what you're going through, who can support you and hold you accountable.
Did he have any specific suggestions for how to find those kinds of connections? Because I think that's something a lot of guys struggle with.
Yeah, for sure. He talks about joining groups or clubs that align with your interests, whether it's martial arts entrepreneurship, even just a men's book club.
I love that. Just getting together with other guys who are actively working on self-improvement.
Exactly. Iron sharpens iron.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of sharpening your skills, he also dives deep into this concept of frame control, which I'll admit I was a little fuzzy on at first.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those red pill concepts that can be a bit hard to grasp, but once you get it, it's like, whoa!
So break it down for me. What is frame control?
Okay, so basically, frame is about the underlying context or perspective that shapes an interaction.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the person who controls the frame They're the ones dictating the terms of engagement, so to speak.
So, how does this apply to relationships? Because it sounds like it could be pretty easily misused.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But the author is very clear that frame control is not about manipulation or dominance.
Okay, good, because that's what I was thinking.
It's more about being grounded in your values, knowing your boundaries, and not letting yourself get pulled into other people's dramas or emotional games.
So it's about staying centered, not getting reactive.
Exactly. He tells the story about a guy who lost his wife's respect because he was always seeking her approval, trying to please her all the time.
Oh, I can see how that would backfire.
Big time. By doing that, he gave away his frame and ended up looking weak and insecure.
That's a perfect example of how losing your frame can really hurt you in a relationship. So how do you actually build and maintain a strong frame?
Well, he gives a lot of practical advice on this, but I think it starts with self-awareness,
Yeah.
understanding your values, your needs, what you're willing to tolerate.
Right, knowing yourself.
Yeah, and then from there, it's about communicating clearly and assertively, not being afraid to say no, and not getting sucked into arguments or emotional spirals that you don't want to be a part of.
It's like you're creating this force field around yourself, protecting your energy.
Exactly. And this ties into what he says about the double bind that men face.
The double bind.
Yeah. He talks about how society expects men to be both strong and sensitive, assertive but accommodating. It's this impossible balancing act.
And it leaves a lot of guys feeling confused and frustrated, for sure.
And his solution is to maintain your frame, to know who you are and what you stand for, no matter what anyone else says.
That's powerful. I bet that resonates with a lot of men out there.
I think so.
Yeah.
But, he doesn't shy away from the more, let's say, tactical aspects of attraction either.
Oh yeah, he gets into that too.
Oh, yeah. He goes deep. Breaks down what women find attractive from both a biological and a psychological perspective.
I'm curious to hear what he has to say, because that can be a bit of a minefield.
He doesn't sugarcoat anything. He talks about physical attractiveness, being fit and healthy. He even gets into fashion and grooming.
Really? Fashion and grooming?
Yeah. He says guys shouldn't underestimate the power of presenting themselves well.
That's probably good advice for a lot of us.
Probably. But it's not just about looks. He also stresses the importance of
Inner confidence.
Exact, that unshakable belief in yourself and your value. He argues that confidence is magnetic, and it's something you can build through your actions, your accomplishments, your overall mindset.
So it's about becoming the kind of man who naturally attracts others, rather than trying to chase after validation or approval.
Right. And he also talks about social intelligence, being able to read social cues, navigate different situations, connect with people on an emotional level.
I'm starting to see a pattern here. It's like all these different pieces, fitness frame, control social intelligence, they all fit together to create this overall aura of strength, confidence, attractiveness.
That's a great way to put it. He's essentially laying out a blueprint for becoming the best version of yourself.
Not just to attract women, but to succeed in all areas of life.
Exactly. And the book also gets in some pretty controversial territory when it comes to the future of masculinity.
Oh yeah, he doesn't
Yeah.
shy away from that, the whole gender war thing.
Not at all. He argues that men are facing a crisis of identity in the modern world.
I think a lot of guys would agree with that.
I think so too. Traditional roles and expectations are being challenged, and there's a lot of confusion about what it means to be a man in the 21st century.
Yeah, it's like the old rules don't apply anymore, but no one's really sure what the new rules are.
And he argues that this crisis is being fueled by a number of factors. Feminism, the changing economic landscape, technology, social media, the whole 9 yards.
Okay, I'm curious to hear how he connects the dots between all of that.
Well, he starts by saying that feminism, while initially aimed at achieving equality, has in some ways gone too far.
How so?
Well, he argues that it's created a climate where masculinity is often demonized or seen as toxic.
I've definitely noticed that.
Yeah.
It's like any expression of traditional masculinity is automatically suspect.
Right. And he also talks about how the changing economic landscape has made it harder for men to fulfill their traditional role as provider.
That makes sense. With more women in the workforce, men are facing more competition, and it can feel like their value is being diminished,
Exactly. And then you add in the influence of technology and social media.
which is huge these days.
Massive. And he argues that it's creating this culture of instant gratification, superficiality, and a disconnect from real-world interaction.
It's like we're constantly bombarded with these unrealistic images of success and happiness.
Right. And it's hard not to compare yourself and come up short.
So where does he see all of this heading? Does he offer any solutions for navigating this gender war and reclaiming a sense of masculinity in the modern world?
He definitely doesn't sugarcoat the challenge, but he does offer a lot of hope and practical advice. He believes that men need to wake up to the realities of the world they're living in and start taking action
Taking action to do what?
to reclaim their power and purpose.
Okay, that sounds empowering, but what does that actually look like?
Well, he starts with self-awareness, understanding your values, your strength, what you want out of life.
Right, knowing yourself.
Exact. And then setting clear goals and taking consistent action to achieve them.
So it's about taking control of your own destiny, not waiting for someone else to give you permission.
Right. And he also stresses the importance of physical fitness, not just for the physical benefit, but for the mental and emotional discipline it builds.
Yeah, I can definitely see how pushing yourself physically can build resilience and confidence.
And he talks about male bonding and brotherhood, finding your tribe of like-minded men.
Guys who can support you, challenge you, hold you accountable.
Exact. And mentorship too, seeking out older, wiser men who can offer guidance.
It's like having a roadmap for navigating the challenges of manhood,
And finding a purpose in life, something that gives you a sense of meaning.
beyond just working and making money.
Right. He also talks about embracing traditional masculine roles, but in a healthy and balanced way.
So protecting and providing, but not in a way that's oppressive or outdated.
Exact. And taking responsibility for your own life, not blaming others, adopting a growth mindset.
Becoming the hero of your own story.
Exactly. And never giving up on your dreams, no matter how challenging things get.
It's a powerful message.
It is a message of hope and empowerment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. It's like he's giving men a new way to look at masculine, It's not about going back to the Stone Age or anything.
No, not at all. It's more about finding that balance between the strength and resilience of traditional masculinity and the sensitivity and emotional intelligence that's so important in today's world.
Exact. And he actually gets really practical about how to do that, He has this whole section on the covert contract in relationships.
Covert contract. Okay, I haven't heard that term before. What's that all about?
Well, he's basically arguing that beneath the surface of most relationships, there's this hidden set of expectations and obligations.
Hidden, like people aren't even aware of them.
Often, not really. It's like we're all operating on these assumptions that we haven't even articulated to ourselves, let alone to our partner.
That makes sense. It's like we all grow up with these ideas about what relationships should look like, but we don't always realize how much those expectations are influencing our behavior.
Right. And it can lead to a lot of conflict and resentment if those expectations aren't aligned.
So, can you give me an example? Like, how does this covert contract play out in real life?
Okay, so let's say you have a guy who feels like he has to be the primary breadwinner, even if his wife is also working and making good money.
Yeah, I've seen that happen a lot.
Right, and it's not that he doesn't want his wife to work, it's just that there's this unspoken expectation that he's the one who's ultimately responsible for providing for the family.
That can create a lot of pressure.
For sure. Absolutely. And it can lead to resentment on both sides, The man might feel trapped by the pressure to provide, while the woman might feel like her contributions aren't fully appreciated.
It's like a lose-lose situation.
Exactly. And it's just one example of how this covert contract can play out. He also talks about the unspoken expectations around emotional labor.
Emotional labor.
Yeah, like who's responsible for managing the emotional needs of the relationship?
I see. And he's saying that women often end up doing most of that work.
Right. And it can be exhausting, constantly being the one who's there to listen, to offer support, to smooth things over. It can take a toll.
And what about the men? Where do they fit into this?
Well, he argues that men are often expected to be stoic and emotionally unavailable.
The strong, silent type?
Exact, but that can lead to them feeling disconnected from their own emotions and from the emotions of their partner.
It's like they're not allowed to be vulnerable.
Right, and it can create a lot of distance in the relationship.
So, what's the solution? How do we address this covert contract? Because it sounds like it's pretty deeply ingrained in our culture.
Well, he's a big advocate for radical honesty and open communication.
Okay, so
Talking it out. Exactly. He encourages couples to have those tough conversations about their expectations, needs, desire. He even suggests that each person write down their non-negotiables.
they're non-negotiable.
Yeah, like the values and principles they're absolutely not willing to compromise on.
Wow, that's pretty intense.
It is. But he argues that it's essential for building a strong and healthier relationship.
I can see that. It's like laying all your cards on the table right from the start.
Exactly. And it's not just about talking. He also stresses the importance of setting boundaries.
Boundary, right? We've talked about that before.
And most importantly, enforcing them.
Because a boundary without enforcement is just a suggestion.
Exactly. He's basically saying that you need to be willing to walk away from a situation or even a relationship if your boundaries are being violated.
That's a tough one. But I get it. It's about self-respect.
Absolutely. Knowing your worth and not settling for less than you deserve.
I love that. And, I think that's a theme that runs throughout the whole book. This idea of men empowering themselves.
Yeah.
Taking control of their lives and their relationships.
Yeah, totally. He's advocating for a future where masculinity is respected and valued, but it's not about dominating women or anything like that.
No, it's about men and women working together.
Yeah.
As equals with mutual respect and understanding.
Exactly. And I think that's a message that a lot of people, both men and women, can get behind.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this has been an amazing deep dive. Really eye-opening.
I agree. A lot to think about.
For sure. And for anyone who wants to learn more, I highly recommend checking out the full book.
You can find it on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground today, from hypergamy and emotional manipulation to frame control and the covert contract.
And the importance of male solidarity,
Yep.
self-improvement, and finding your purpose.
We've really gone deep, and we hope you found it valuable.
We'll be back next week with another deep dive. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss it.
Until then, keep those red pills handy and keep striving to become the best version of yourself.
We'll see you next time.